I have always been the one who made things easy for everyone else. The one who researched every detail, confirmed every reservation, handled every awkward phone call so nobody else had to. Growing up in our house in Cincinnati, my older sister Danielle was the one who filled every room she walked into. Loud opinions, big emotions, the kind of person who could cry at a dinner table and somehow make it everyone else's fault that she was upset. I was the opposite. I was the planner, the quiet fixer, the one who got things done without asking for credit because, in our family, credit always seemed to flow in one direction anyway. I'm 29 years old. I work as a project coordinator for a mid-sized logistics company downtown. I'm good at my job because I'm good at keeping track of moving parts, anticipating what can go wrong before it does, and staying calm when everything around me starts to fall apart. Those are skills I didn't learn at any training seminar. I learned them growing up as Danielle's younger sister in a house where my parents treated her like a piece of fine china and treated me like the cushioning around it. Danielle is 32. She has always been what my parents called spirited. When she threw a fit at a restaurant as a teenager because they got her order wrong, my mom laughed and said she had high standards. When I once mentioned I didn't like the way Danielle spoke to me in front of her friends, my dad told me I was being too sensitive and that Danielle just has a lot of feelings. I learned early on that Danielle's feelings were valid and mine were an inconvenience. For most of my 20s, I told myself the gap was closing. We were adults. People grow. My parents weren't bad people. They just had blind spots. I convinced myself that if I kept being reliable, kept being the stable one, eventually everyone would see that I wasn't just background noise in this family. I was wrong. It took a long weekend in the mountains of North Carolina and a scene in front of 11 people at a dinner table to finally teach me what I should have understood years ago. Every year since my grandmother passed, our family has done a big Thanksgiving trip together instead of the usual holiday at my parents' house in Cincinnati. It started as a way to shake up the grief, and eventually it just became the tradition. We'd rent a place, all gather for 4 or 5 days, cook together, and pretend we were the kind of family that genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Some years that pretending came easier than others. This past year, I offered to organize everything. I do it best. Everyone knows it. And after the previous year's trip fell apart because Danielle had volunteered to handle the cabin rental and then forgot to confirm the booking, I figured it was easier to just take it on myself. I found a beautiful property just outside Asheville, North Carolina. 5 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, mountain views, a big open kitchen that could actually accommodate 10 people trying to cook at the same time. It was listed at $4,200 for 5 nights. I also pre-booked a guided hike for the group on Friday morning, a private pottery class my aunt had mentioned wanting to try, and made reservations at a well-reviewed farm-to-table restaurant for Thanksgiving dinner itself, since we all agreed we didn't want to cook that year. The total, between the cabin deposit, the activity bookings, and a large grocery run, I did the week before the trip so the house would be stocked when we arrived, came out to just over $6,000. I put it all on my credit card. The plan was that everyone would Venmo me their share once we were there and settled. I sent a detailed breakdown to the family group chat. My parents said it looked wonderful. My aunt said she was so excited about the pottery class. My cousin Marcus said he was in for his share. Danielle sent back a single thumbs up emoji and nothing else. I told myself that was fine. We drove down separately. I took my car, which seated 5, and brought my parents and my aunt and uncle. Danielle drove with her boyfriend Derek and 2 of her friends she'd invited without really asking anyone, which brought the group to 11 instead of 9. When I pointed out gently that the additional guests meant her share of the cabin cost would need to be adjusted, she said Derek and her friends would figure it out and moved on. They did not figure it out. The first 2 days were fine, genuinely fine. The house was everything I'd hoped it would be. The view from the back porch on Wednesday morning made my mom tear up. My uncle made his famous cornbread. We played card games until midnight and everyone laughed a lot, and I thought, okay, maybe I was being too guarded. Maybe this is going to be good. Danielle spent most of those first 2 days doing things on her own schedule. She slept until 11, skipped the morning hike I'd organized, complained that the trail I picked for Thursday was too intense, even though she hadn't looked it up, and quietly made it known to Derek that she found the pottery class idea ridiculous. But she wasn't overtly unpleasant. She was just Danielle, orbiting the group without quite being in it, leaving the little messes she always left without noticing them. Thursday, Thanksgiving, was when everything changed. I had confirmed the restaurant reservation twice. It was a 40-minute drive into Asheville, and I'd told everyone we needed to leave by 6:15 to be there by 7. At 6 o'clock, I was ready. My parents were ready. My aunt and uncle were ready. Marcus was ready. At 6:10, Danielle and Derek and her 2 friends were still upstairs getting ready. At 6:20, I knocked on the bedroom door and said, through the wood, that we needed to leave. Danielle opened the door. She was in a robe, hair half done, and she looked at me with that particular expression she has, the one that has always made me feel like I'm being ridiculous, just by existing in her line of sight. "We're not ready," she said. "Give us 20 minutes. Danielle, the reservation is at 7. It's a 40-minute drive. We have to go. Then go. We'll meet you there. You don't have a car here. You rode with Derek, and Derek is still getting dressed." She looked at me for a long moment. "So we'll be a little late. Call the restaurant and push the reservation. It's Thanksgiving. They're fully booked. They told me when I made the reservation that they couldn't accommodate late arrivals." She said, "God, Claire, you are so rigid. Not everything has to be run like a military operation." And then she closed the door. We left at 6:40. We were late. The restaurant, to their enormous credit, held our table for 15 extra minutes. But by the time we were seated, it was after 7:30, and the kitchen had to adjust our ordering window. It wasn't a disaster. But it wasn't the smooth, relaxed dinner I had envisioned. Danielle, to be fair, was pleasant during most of dinner. She ordered an expensive bottle of wine for the table, which I thought was a nice gesture, until I realized she was treating it like it would just absorb into the general cost of the evening, which I was also paying for. I let it go. It was Thanksgiving. I wanted one nice night. The trouble started over something so small I almost didn't register it at first. My dad was talking about a work thing, a project his company had wrapped up recently, and somehow the conversation drifted to my job. My aunt asked me how things were going, and I mentioned that I'd been given lead on a new regional rollout, which was a big deal for me. I was proud of it. I said so, maybe a little more warmly than I usually would. Danielle set down her wine glass. "No offense," she said. And when anyone says, "no offense," you already know what comes next. But I'd never really understood what you actually do. Like, you coordinate things? That's a job? The table went quiet in that particular way. That means everyone heard it. "Project coordination is a real discipline," I said. My voice was even. "It's how large-scale logistics operations stay functional." "Sure," she said in that tone. "I just mean, Derek manages an entire team of engineers. It's a little different. Derek looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on Earth." "Danielle," my mom said mildly. "What? I'm just saying." Claire always acts like she's doing something huge, and I don't know, it's a lot of self-congratulation for basically being a really organized person. I looked at her. The table was still quiet. My uncle was looking at his plate. Marcus had his jaw set in the way he gets when he's deciding whether to say something. My dad, who I had driven 7 hours to be here with, who I had spent $6,000 to give a beautiful holiday, looked at me and said, "She doesn't mean it badly, sweetheart. Danielle's just direct." There it was. The translation I had heard my whole life. Danielle is cruel and we're calling it direct. Danielle humiliated you at the dinner table and we're calling it honesty. You are the one who needs to soften. I did not cry. I wanted to. I felt the familiar tightening in my throat that I have spent 20 years learning to suppress. I took a sip of water. I said, "You're right, Dad," and I went back to eating. But something had shifted inside me. Something that had been bending for a very long time had reached the end of its flexibility. When we got back to the cabin, Danielle was in high spirits, chatting with Derek and her friends in the living room, apparently having already moved on from the dinner table entirely, as if the conversation had meant nothing, because for her it hadn't. She said what she said and forgot it. That's the privilege of being the one who lands the blow instead of receiving it. I went to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed and I looked at the booking confirmation emails still open on my phone from weeks ago. The cabin confirmation, the hike I'd prepaid for Friday morning, the pottery studio with a 48-hour cancellation policy I'd read very carefully when I booked it. All of it in my name, all of it on my card. I thought about what I had spent, not just the money, the weeks of research, the spreadsheet I made comparing 7 different properties, the 17-tap browser window I had opened the night I booked the activities, the grocery run where I bought 3 different types of pie because I knew my aunt preferred pecan and my dad preferred apple and I wanted everyone to have what they liked. I thought about Danielle, who had sent 1 thumbs-up emoji and brought 2 extra guests and had not once asked me what she owed me or whether I needed help. And I thought about my dad's voice. She doesn't mean it badly, sweetheart. Danielle's just direct. I opened my laptop. The pottery studio had a cancellation portal. I logged in with the email I'd used to book, and I canceled the reservation for our group, full refund since I was within the window. The guided hike had a phone number for after-hours cancellations. I called it, left a message with the booking reference number, and requested a cancellation per their policy. The restaurant was already done with us, so that was nothing to worry about. Then I looked at the cabin. The rental platform had a host messaging system. I sent a message to the property manager explaining that I was the primary leaseholder and that I needed to discuss a change to the checkout arrangements. He was awake, apparently, because he responded within 10 minutes. I explained my situation. I asked if it was possible for me to check out early and for the remaining guests to stay under a revised arrangement billed to a different card. He said that would require the new guests to create an account and agree to the rental terms as the responsible party. I said I understood. I said I would let them know. I did not let them know that night. I packed my bag quietly. I am, as my sister noted, a very organized person. It did not take me long. In the morning, I woke up at 6:30, loaded my bag into my car, and went back inside to make coffee. My parents came downstairs around 8, which is early for them on a vacation. I poured them coffee and we sat on the back porch. The mountains were pale blue in the early light, and the air was cold and clean and completely still. My dad said it was a beautiful morning. I agreed. My mom asked what time the hike was leaving. I told her I had canceled it. She looked surprised. I told her I had also canceled the pottery class. Why? She asked. Because I paid for them, I said, and I've decided I'm going home today. They both looked at me. Claire, what? We have 2 more days. You're welcome to stay, I said, but you'll need to work out the remaining nights with the property manager directly. He'll need a card on file from whoever takes over the reservation. I've already messaged him. He knows the situation. My mom put down her coffee cup. This is because of last night. It's because of a lot of things, I said. Last night was just the most recent. My dad started to say something about overreacting, and I looked at him in a way that I don't think I have ever looked at him before. Calm. Completely calm. Not angry, not tearful, just clear. Dad, I said, I paid $6,000 to give this family a Thanksgiving. I drove 7 hours. I stocked this house with food. I booked every activity. I made every reservation. And last night at the dinner I planned and paid for, Danielle told me in front of everyone that my career is a joke. And you told me she was just being direct. I paused. I would like you to think about whether you would have said the same thing to her if the situation were reversed. He didn't answer. My mom's eyes were wet. I love you both, I said. I'm going to finish my coffee and then I'm going to drive home. Have a safe trip back. I heard Danielle come downstairs about 20 minutes later. I was rinsing my mug in the kitchen. She came in looking sleep-soft and unbothered, reaching past me for the coffee pot. And then she noticed my jacket on, my keys on the counter. Are you going somewhere? Home, I said. She laughed a little. Seriously, it's the day after Thanksgiving. I know when Thanksgiving is. She set down the coffee pot. Her voice shifted. Claire, this is about last night, isn't it? Oh my God, you are so sensitive. I was just making conversation. You told 11 people that my job isn't real? I was joking. Then it wasn't funny. She made a sound, a short exhale, and looked at the ceiling the way she does when she thinks someone is being tiresome. So what, you're just leaving? You're going to ruin everyone's trip because you can't take a joke? "I'm not ruining anyone's trip," I said. "You're all welcome to stay. You just need to call the property manager and put a card on file for the remaining 2 nights. His number is in the welcome binder by the front door." She stared at me. "What? You can't just— your name is on the rental." "It is," I said. "And I'm leaving, which means the reservation reverts to unhosted unless someone takes over." "How much is it per night?" $840. The color that moved through her face was something I wish I could describe more precisely. It started as irritation and passed through disbelief and landed somewhere that looked, for just a moment, like a reckoning. Derek came downstairs, then my aunt and uncle, then Marcus, who read the room instantly and said nothing. Danielle started explaining to Derek what was happening, getting louder as she went, and I stood at the kitchen counter and let her explain. I had already said everything I needed to say. My parents were still on the porch. I went out and hugged my mom. I hugged my dad. He held on for a second longer than usual. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. I got in my car and I drove north. I stopped for gas outside of Knoxville and sat in the parking lot for a while with the engine running and the heat on. I thought I might cry. I didn't. What I felt was quieter than crying. It was more like the feeling of setting down something you've been carrying for so long you stop noticing the weight. I called my friend Priya from the road, and she stayed on the phone with me for 2 hours through Tennessee. She didn't tell me I'd overreacted. She didn't tell me I'd been too harsh. She said, "Good," in this very simple, very solid way, and then she said it again. "Good." Danielle texted me 3 times between Knoxville and Lexington. The first was a paragraph about how I had embarrassed the whole family. The second was shorter, something about how she hoped I was happy. The third just said, "You owe me and Derek an apology." I put my phone face down in the cup holder and drove. My aunt called me the next morning. She is my dad's sister, and she has always been a little more plain-spoken than the rest of the family. She said she had spoken to my parents the night before after I left. She said she wanted me to know that she had told my mom and dad exactly what she thought, which was that what Danielle said at dinner was unkind, that it was not the first time she had watched it happen, and that my parents had been making excuses for it for years. "Your dad knows," she said. "He's just not great at saying so in the moment." "He never is," I said. "No," she said, "he isn't." A pause. "But Claire, he called me this morning and he was upset with himself. Really upset. That's not nothing." It wasn't nothing. I held on to that. My mom called that same evening. She cried for most of the call, which I was prepared for, because my mom processes things through tears, the way other people process them through long walks or silence. I let her cry. I didn't rush her. When she settled, she said that she was sorry. Not in the way people say it when they want the conversation to be over. She said it carefully, like she was choosing each word and meaning it. "I don't think we ever saw how much we were asking of you," she said, "by letting Danielle behave the way she did. I think we told ourselves you were just the stronger one and you could handle it, and that was a lazy way to think about it. It wasn't fair." "No," I said. "It wasn't." "Will you give us a chance to do better?" I thought about that. The honest answer is that I don't know yet. I am not someone who makes that kind of promise quickly. I've spent enough of my life performing forgiveness before I actually felt it. What I told her was that I was willing to try, slowly, and that trying meant things would have to look different than they had. She said she understood. Danielle and Derek ended up staying 2 more nights. I know this because my cousin Marcus told me, somewhat apologetically, that they figured out the payment situation with the property manager. Marcus also told me that Danielle spent most of Friday complaining about me to anyone who would listen, and that by Friday night, Derek had quietly pointed out to her that she had also never Venmo'd me for her share of the cabin, or acknowledged the groceries I'd bought, or the activities she'd been planning to attend on someone else's dime. Marcus said that conversation had gone about as well as you'd expect. I didn't contact Danielle. I wasn't ready to, and I also wasn't sure I owed her contact first. What I knew was that I was done operating as a resource for people who would take from me without thinking about the cost. Not the financial cost, the actual cost. the one that accumulates in small moments, small dismissals, small permissions given to people who use your patience as proof that you'll absorb whatever they throw. The week after I got home, I was sitting at my desk on a Tuesday morning and I got a card in the mail. A real card, handwritten, in my dad's printing, which is angular and a little cramped because he never quite mastered cursive and switched to print somewhere in his 30s. It said that he was proud of me, that he had been proud of me for a long time and was not good enough at saying so, that he had been doing some thinking on the drive home from North Carolina, and that some of that thinking was uncomfortable, and that he supposed uncomfortable was probably the appropriate feeling to be sitting with right now. He said he loved me. He said he was sorry it took him this long. I read it twice. I put it in the small wooden box on my dresser where I keep things I want to remember. Then I sat for a while, not doing anything in particular, just breathing. I have spent most of my life making things smooth for other people, making sure the reservations were confirmed and the groceries were bought and the awkward silences were filled. I don't regret being that person. I think reliability is an actual value, not just a doormat trait. But there is a version of reliability that has been weaponized against me, and I am done participating in it. What I know now is this: my name on the lease means something. My effort means something. My time and my money and my organizational brain that runs quietly in the background so everyone else gets to show up and enjoy themselves without knowing what it took to make the weekend happen, all of that means something. I am not background noise. I never was. This Thanksgiving, I am going to Priya's house. Her family does a big, chaotic potluck dinner, and her mother makes about 9 different dishes, and everyone argues cheerfully about football teams they only sort of follow. I am bringing pie. I've already looked up the best bakery near her house because I am still and probably will always be the person who does that research. But this time, I'm doing it for people who will notice. The mountains outside Asheville are probably still there, exactly the same. Cold and quiet and completely indifferent to the small human dramas that happen in the houses below them. I think about that view from the back porch sometimes. The pale blue morning, the coffee, the moment before I said what I needed to say. I think about it and I don't feel sad. I feel, more than anything, like I finally showed up for myself the way I have always shown up for everyone else. It only took 29 years, but I got there.